Hey there, this is PJ. How you doing? This is our confirmation lesson for January 26th, 2022. You matter more than you think. It is good to see each of you today. I missed seeing you the last 2 weeks with my continuing education event and then being with my mom for the death of my dad. I want to thank you for the cards. When I came into the office yesterday, it was so nice to be able to see them and go through them. Tonight, we are wrapping up the final week of our series today called The Big Questions. We spent the last few weeks talking about some of the big questions we ask about who we are, where we fit in, and why are we here? And we found that the better answer to our biggest questions actually come from God. So before we dive in today, I want to start by asking you another big question. What is your favorite game to play online? Since we're not interacting as far as with this not being live, drop it in the comment section. Okay, so maybe that's not the big question that you were thinking of, but it is an important one for a lot of you right now. Do you love when you get to create a whole world of your own or create things to be just the way you want them to be? If you play games like these, then you know just how fun it can be. It's like you're making your own little virtual world better, one little thing at a time. It kind of makes me wish that the real world would be like that. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could just make this world a little better with just one swipe of our finger? The big question we're asking today is this: what's the point of me? Talk about a big question. Maybe this isn't something that you think about too often right now, but at some point you probably will. It's pretty normal to wonder if there's some big, grand plan for your life. In fact, as a middle schooler, I bet you've already thought about this in a different way. Maybe a teacher or a parent or some other adult in your life has asked you to think about what you want to be when you grow up. Maybe in kindergarten that was an easy question to answer. Back then, you just said actress, an athlete, a doctor, a teacher, without much thought. But now, the question feels a little more complicated because now you are interested in 1,000 different things. How are you supposed to know who or what you want to be as an adult? You're still trying to figure out who you want to be right now. Are you going to be in band, orchestra, choir, theater, or sports? And which sport should you play? All of them? What friend group is the right friend group? Do you like that person as a friend or more than a friend? There's just so much to think about. Or maybe thinking about your purpose for now or later isn't something you've really considered because you've got bigger things to worry about right now. Maybe this past year has been rough on your family, and you're only thinking about what you've got to do to get through today. Thinking about the future isn't really that high of a priority when there is so much to figure out today. See what I mean? Big questions about big purpose can feel like a lot right now. And when you step into the church world, the questions even get bigger. You might hear people at church say things like, God has a plan for your life. And that feels like a lot of pressure. It sounds like it means you have to be a pastor or a youth leader or move to another country to tell people about God. And what about if you aren't sure what you think about this whole God thing anyway? Where do you fit in to that big plan and purpose? All these questions about purpose feel big. And maybe they even feel like questions you don't need to worry about right now. But today, I want you to consider that whether you realize it or not, God does have a plan and a purpose for you right now as a middle schooler. And what it is might be different than what you think. Today, we're going to read a little bit of a letter written by a guy named Paul. Paul was a leader in the early church who often wrote letters to believers in other parts of the world. This letter was written to people in a place called Corinth. In this letter, we learn a little bit more about Paul and another guy named Apollos. These two were basically what we would call influencers. These happened because people followed them. Paul and Apollos were leaders who followed God and made a big difference in leading other people to do the same. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I hear things like this and I immediately count myself out. I can never be like Paul or Apollos. I don't know enough about God or have enough followers or don't even know how I'd tell anybody anything about what I believe. God's purpose for them couldn't possibly be the same as God's purpose for me. Well, let's take a look at the letter that mentions these guys. After all, who is Apollos? Who is Paul? We are only God's servants, through whom you believe the good news. Each of us did the work that the Lord gave us. 1 Corinthians 3:5. What does that mean exactly? Well, let's keep reading to find out. It's not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is that God makes the seed grow. The one who plants and the one who waters works together with the same purpose, and both will be rewarded for their own hard work. For we are both God's workers, and you are God's field. You are God's building. 1 Corinthians 3:7-9. So we have to keep in mind here that during this time of this letter was written, farming and agriculture were a big part of the culture. These examples of planting and watering would have made a ton of sense to the people reading it back then. They would have understood that when it comes to farming, you need people who plant. You also need people who water. It takes both people doing their specific jobs to successfully grow anything. If the planter doesn't put down the seeds, the water is being poured on empty soil. And if the water doesn't show up to water the seeds, there's nothing the planter put in the ground will grow. Both jobs are equally important. Both purposes are important to making the seed grow. And who does that? Well, God. God has the most important part in all of this. God makes the seed grow. And all we have to do is show up and be willing to serve our unique role and let God do the rest. That's your purpose. To join in God's purpose in the world, to choose every day to be part of what God is doing in the world. See, you matter more than you think. No matter what your part is in what God's doing, you matter. Because by serving in your unique role, you can be part of what God is doing to make the world better. You matter more than you think. Those big questions we have about why we're here and what we're doing in the world, the answers are found in God. God is always in the business of making the world better, and we can be a part of that story every single day. You can be a part of what God is doing to make the world better. That's how much you matter to God. And we get to be part of making the world better through our love and our actions. This evening, I simply want to just take a moment for you to see what God might be doing in your story today. Then think about how you can join in on that purpose. You matter so much that God wants you to be part of the bigger purpose. You can live your life today as a part of God's story in a million different ways. So remember, you matter more than you think, and you can be part of what God is doing to make the world better. And that can start today with your small group. Small group is a great place to not only think about the big questions and purpose, but to help each other figure out better answers and figure out what role you can play in God's story today. I can't wait to hear how you encourage each other to do just that this week. So as you head to small groups now, here's a question that I want you to think about. What's one way you think God can use you to make the world better? And I would love to hear your answers. Have a good day.